The Houston Texans are by far the most exciting team that everybody has their eyes on for the 2024 season. Last year, they were projected to be one of the worst teams in the league heading into the regular season. However, after an elite rookie season from CJ Stroud, Houston established themselves as a contender for years to come. With the addition of Pro Bowl wide receiver Stephon Diggs in the offseason, many believe that they have a chance to even win the Super Bowl in 2024. While they're still a relatively young team, we also think that they have what it takes to win it all, and today, we're going to be breaking down Houston's 2023 season, their off-season pickups on both sides of the ball, and explain why we think the Texans will be going home with the trophy in 2024. So, let's start off with the 2023 season recap. The Texans did absolutely not hit the ground running to kick off the 23 campaign, struggling to a 3-3 record heading into the Week 7 bye week. Over that span of time, they played two teams that went on to make the playoffs, being the Baltimore Ravens in the opening week, where they were soundly defeated 25-9, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they soundly defeated. Shortly after their bye week, they once again fell below 500 to a 3-4 record after a loss to the Panthers. However, after catching fire late in the season off the back of an elite rookie season from CJ Stroud, they barely snuck into the playoffs with a 10-7 record, winning the AFC South by one game. Stroud finished the regular season with 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns, and only 5 interceptions, numbers that are relatively unheard of from a rookie. He also took home the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, was named to the Pro Bowl, and ended up finishing 8th in the MVP voting. However, he was far from done with his magical tear through the air. In the wildcard round against a tough Cleveland Browns defense, he threw for 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions, while on only 21 passing attempts. However, the passing game was far from the only thing clicking for the Texans in this game. Despite Joe Flacco looking like his old self during his comeback with Cleveland, Houston brought him back to earth, forcing 2 interceptions that were both returned for touchdowns. And by the time the final whistle sounded, the Texans came out on top by a final score of 45-14. In the divisional round, they themselves found themselves matched up against another buzzsaw of a team in the Baltimore Ravens. Their defense held Stroud in check to only 175 yards, and he was unable to find the end zone anywhere. On the other side of the ball, they allowed Lamar Jackson to have a solid day, throwing for 152 yards and 2 touchdowns on only 22 attempts, while also picking up 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. While Houston's season did end on a sour note with a 34-10 loss, making it to the divisional round after having the second worst season in football the year prior, well, that is an extremely quick and promising turnaround. The story of the season for the Texans was really the rise of CJ Stroud, because in the 22 season, the Texans ranked 25th in passing yards, 18th in passing touchdowns, and threw the second most interceptions in the league. Now, compare that to their 2023 numbers, it was night and day, ranking 7th in passing yards, 12th in passing touchdowns, and throwing the second fewest interceptions. Along with the immense amount of potential that Stroud even showed that season, Houston's pass-catching room proved that they have a fair amount of young talent, as well as with both Nico Collins and Tank Dell putting on very impressive performances through the year. On the ground, the Texans were a very mediocre team with a duo of Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce at running back, ranking 22nd in rushing yards and 23rd in rushing TDs. While Pierce had a promising rookie season in 22, he took a bit of a step back after Houston acquired Singletary. With some changes coming to the position over the offseason, they could have taken a big step up in the run game in 2024. Defensively, Houston showed last season that they still have some room for growth. However, there's also some promising signs. While they did rank 23rd in the league in passing yards allowed, they allowed the fewest passing touchdowns in the league. With them having a very young core in the secondary, there's a strong chance that they continue to improve as they get more experience against NFL caliber pass catchers. In terms of stopping the run, Houston did an incredible job keeping opposing running backs in check, allowing the 6th fewest rushing yards last season. However, they did struggle in short yardage situations, especially around the goal line, allowing 27th fewest rushing touchdowns. Similar to their secondary, there's a fair amount of promising young pieces on Houston's defensive line that will continue to grow as their career continues. And as long as they continue to develop as a unit at the quick pace they're already doing, there is a strong chance they could end up being one of the league's best defensive teams of the year. So let's kick it off with some offensive acquisitions in the offseason. While the Texans didn't really focus on their offense through the free agency signings, they did make two massive trades to add a couple of elite playmakers to their already loaded offense. Starting off, they gave up only a 7th round pick to get Joe Mixon, and last season, Mixon rushed for 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns with the Bengals. He's definitely going to bring some much needed stability and versatility to Houston's running game, plus we'll be giving them the running back that they were missing last year. Later in the offseason, they get a 2nd round pick to the Buffalo Bills for Stefon Diggs, a 6th round pick, and even a 5th round pick. Despite being a down year last season, Diggs was still able to finish the year with 107 receptions for 1,183 yards and 8 TDs. Playing alongside Stroud could easily lead to 24 being a bounce back year for Diggs, and there might even be a chance that he and his new quarterback could even go on to be one of the top duos in the league. These two additions of elite veterans paired with the young talent that proved themselves last year has set the Texans up to potentially be the best offense in the entire NFL in 2024. In the draft, they even added some more depth to their offensive line within the 2nd round selection, at least, of offensive tackle Blake Fisher of Notre Dame. Now onto the flip side of the ball, let's look at the defensive acquisitions they picked up. Arguably the biggest signing that Houston made in the offseason was the addition of defensive end Danielle Hunter. Hunter is going off to back-to-back Pro Bowl seasons, and him playing on the opposite side of Will Anderson Jr. helps to give the Texans one of the most formidable pass rushing teams heading into the 2024 season. And along with Hunter, Houston could also add another key talent to their defensive line in Denico Autry. Autry is a very versatile defensive lineman. While his primary position is defensive end, he spent 2 seasons playing defensive tackle during his time with the Colts. And in the draft, the Texans used their 42nd overall pick selecting Kamari Lassiter, who's a cornerback out of Georgia, along with getting in the 3rd round safety Kalen Bullock from USC. With Houston giving up their 23rd fewest passing yards in the league, these two players could make an instant impact in 2024. Now, what about the key departures for the team? While the Texans were able to make some major acquisitions in the offseason, they also lost a bunch of key players that played a huge role in their success last season. For starters, they ended up losing Jonathan Greenard to the Minnesota Vikings, who put up a pretty good 12.5 sack season, and while this is a massive loss to the Texans, the acquisition of Danielle Hunter should soften that blow. Along with this, they also lost defensive tackle Malik Collins to the 49ers, who started in 16 games for the Texans last season and recorded 5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. Collins was not the only starting defensive tackle Houston lost, as they also ended up getting rid of Sheldon Rankins, who signed with the Cincinnati Bengals following a 6-sack, 9-tackle loss season. Next season, the Texans may greatly struggle even more so to stop the run due to them losing both defensive tackles. However, even with all that said, they could still go into the 2024 season with a better defensive unit than they had in 2023, as well as a great defensive mind in head coach D'Amico Ryans. So the big question on the table now is, why will the Houston Texans win the 24 Super Bowl? After a 23 season that went surprisingly well for the Texans, they came into this season as a juggernaut in a loaded AFC. While they are still a very young team, CJ Stroud's already proven himself as one of the most talented quarterbacks that the league has to offer. With the additions of Joe Mixon and Stefon Diggs, Stroud has an immense amount of weapons at his disposal and could very well be contending for the NFL MVP come season end. On the defensive side of the ball, defensive-minded head coach D'Amico Ryans and the Texans front office had made it a priority to load out their unit. While they did take some massive losses at the defensive tackle positions, young emerging stars like Will Anderson Jr. and Derek Stingley Jr. still give Houston an incredibly scary defense. Even though the Texans are still a fairly young team, they have the talent, coaching, and quarterback willpower to be able to win a Super Bowl in 2024.